Autumn is quite possibly the best season for cozy movies. I don't know what it is, but for some reason when autumn rolls around, the movies just seem so much cozier and so much more heartwarming and so much more mysterious, and perhaps it's the longer nights and the cooler days and the darker evenings, but the idea of watching a movie wrapped up in a blanket with a cozy drink is far more appealing than at any other time of the year for me. Today I'm going to be talking about autumnal movies, or movies that feel very autumnal to me anyway. And I'm going to share a book that I think you would enjoy if you like that movie. So in short, this video is, if you like this movie, you will like this book. Autumn edition. The first movie that of course we have to talk about is You've Got Mail. Although this movie is set in multiple seasons, there's just something very autumnal about it, and I think a good portion of the film is set in the fall, and it definitely has that kind of feel to me of autumn in the city. And the book that I want to recommend if you like You've Got Mail is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. In this book, the main character, Iris, is sending letters through a magical wardrobe, and she is sending these letters to her brother, or at least she thinks she's sending them to her brother. However, after months of not receiving anything back, she finally gets a letter back. However, it is not from her brother, it is from another boy. And this book has the whole kind of storyline of two people writing to each other. One of them knows who the other person is, but the other person does not know and is kept in the dark. And it's about two people falling in love through the written word. This book also shares the love of writing and books with You've Got Mail. You've Got Mail, of course, is about two rival bookshop owners, and this is between two rival journalists. Also, like You've Got Mail, it's cozy and it's heartwarming, but there is also a real depth to the story. There is also a much deeper undertone to it that I think this book does so well and had me so moved throughout. If you want cozy atmospheres with steaming cups of tea and the clack of typewriters, then this is the perfect book for you. The distinction, of course, is that it is a fantasy novel set in a fictional world war between two opposing gods and the journalists that are documenting it. The second movie, which is also one of my favourite autumnal movies, is Dead Poets Society. If you love this movie, I mean, I feel like there's so many recommendations of books that match this movie. I know the one that's always recommended is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. However, I have not read that book, so I cannot recommend it. But the book that I would recommend is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. Dead Poets Society is often associated with the dark academia theme or subgenre, and this book is also within that genre as well. It's a book about literature and academia, but the darker side of academia. It also shares the idea of secret societies and hidden academic groups and that whole world of academia very well. This is a novel about a man who lives in this house, except this house is a whole world, and there are oceans and tides and so many caverns and rooms within this house, and to this man, this house is everything. It is the whole world, and everything goes a little bit wrong when another person enters the house, and it completely uproots what Piranesi knows about the world. And it is so good, it's so weird, it's so creepy and eerie, but in the best possible way, and I would really recommend this one. Another film that I could not do this video without mentioning is, of course, Harry Potter. And I know this is a book series, I'm not going to recommend the Harry Potter book series for the Harry Potter movie series, but the movies in particular feel very autumnal to me. I think because each story begins at the start of the academic year. It feels very autumnal right from the get-go of each movie, and just the setup and the scenery and in general the school setting seems to fit really well. The book that I want to recommend for this one is Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, and I feel like this is a little bit of a rogue recommendation because it's not set in a magic school, it's not about young wizards, even though there are so many books that I could have recommended in that category. But I've heard this book referenced just once, and I can't remember where it was, as if Harry Potter had turned up at Nocturne Alley and didn't know what magic was, didn't know that magic existed. And that is kind of what this book is like. It's somebody who has no real imagination, no real passions, no real crazy expectations in life, who ends up in a world where weird magical things happen and he suddenly has to save everyone. And it's so good, it's such a good story. Neil Gaiman tells this story so well. It is a lot darker than Harry Potter. I would say this is very much an adult fantasy book rather than a children's fantasy book. However, if you are somebody who grew up watching the Harry Potter movies and loves the autumnal atmosphere and the magical atmosphere, but also appreciates a bit of a play on the trope of the chosen one, then I would absolutely recommend this book. The next movie is Knives Out, and this is a murder mystery movie that came out a few years ago. And to me, it's really autumnal just from the setting. I think it's set in the autumn, but they're all in their kind of cozy knitted sweaters and drinking steaming cups of tea, and the whole setting feels very mysterious and autumnal. And the book that I want to recommend for people who love this movie is Crooked House by Agatha Christie. Just like Knives Out, this is about a twisted family who have some secrets, and there is some family drama involving a murder. It's also set within a household, so we follow a family and a household of characters, and I believe the main character is kind of an outsider to the family, a little bit like in Knives Out, how one of the main characters that you're following is sort of an outsider to the family but is linked somehow. This book follows the fiance of the granddaughter of the person who's murdered. This is a standalone Agatha Christie novel as well, so you don't have to read it as part of the series. It's not a Poirot book, it's just its own mystery thriller, and it's so good and definitely has those similar feels to Knives Out. The next movie is Stardust, which I feel like a few of these movies are of course books that have been turned into movies, and Stardust as well is originally a book by Neil Gaiman that was converted into a movie, so I'm not going to recommend Stardust the book. The book I'm going to recommend is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Stardust is about a person's quest to find something magical and the unexpected journey that it takes them on. And that is kind of the synopsis of this story as well. Emily Wilde is a professor at Oxford or Cambridge, and in this version of our world, it is acknowledged widely that fairies do exist, and it is a whole study and academics are behind this, and Emily Wilde in particular is a professor of the study of fairies, and she is on a quest to write the world's first encyclopedia of fairies, and so she has gone on a search for the last fairy that she needs to find to document to write the encyclopedia. And just as our main character in Stardust does not quite have an easy journey to find the star that he needs to find, Emily Wilde does not have the simplest journey in finding this last fairy. This also shares the kind of charming, whimsical, childlike nature of Stardust with the kind of depth and slightly darker undercurrent that movie has too, and I think this has a very similar kind of feel to it, and I think you would like this if you love the movie Stardust. Next of all, we have Howl's Moving Castle, and this is one of my favourite movies. It's one of my favourite books, but it's also one of my favourite movies because I watched that long before I'd read the book. And I am gonna go back on what I said earlier of saying I'm not gonna recommend the book to the movie. In this case, I am, but I'm going to recommend, just dropping them, I'm gonna recommend the sequels to Howl's Moving Castle. So Howl's Moving Castle, the movie, is obviously based on Howl's Moving Castle, the book. However, Diana Wynne Jones also wrote 2 more books in this kind of world, and they are Castle in the Air and House of Many Ways. And these are often forgotten about because Howl's Moving Castle is so brilliant and it kind of wraps itself up in a story. These are not direct sequels, they're more a sort of continuation of the world in which the main characters reappear at times throughout the books, more so in House of Many Ways, but they also appear in Castle in the Air as well. But I would so recommend, if you've watched the movie, read Howl's Moving Castle, and if you've read Howl's Moving Castle and still love that story, definitely read some more of Diana Wynne Jones's works because they share the same charm and whimsy and magic of Howl's Moving Castle, just in a slightly different way. So Castle in the Air is a kind of Tales of the Arabian Nights retelling, and House of Many Ways is about a girl who goes to her uncle's house to go and look after it because he has fallen ill and the elves have taken him because they're the only ones who can heal him. And it's about the mishaps and adventures she has whilst living in this wizard's house. So very similar to Howl's Moving Castle. And Howl and Sophie and the characters from that movie and from that book reappear quite a lot and feature quite a lot in this book as well. So definitely would recommend those. So those are all of the recommendations I have for this video. Please let me know if you have any favourite autumnal movies that I have not mentioned in this video, and also if you have a book recommendation for that movie, please put those in the comments so that we can all share in them and all have some more book recommendations for our favourite movies. I'm thinking of making this video a seasonal thing, so doing the same at Christmas time and springtime and summertime, so let me know if you enjoyed this kind of video and would be interested in that kind of thing. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day wherever you are in this world, and I will see you very soon with another video.